Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasir. And what's on tap for today? Well, we've got another video clip of our favorite friends at the Young Turks, who I affectionately like to call the Young Jerks. This time it's Ana Kasparian with the guest host of her own. And the question they're asking folks is, you know what? Banning books is a bad idea. It's a losing strategy for the Republicans. And we're going to get to all that in the next few seconds, because that's a flawed study that they're looking for. It's a flawed report. They didn't ask the right questions. I'll tell you the question they should have asked, and we'll get to all that just in a few seconds. But before we do, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow us. Hit that notification bell. Put your comments down below. Let me know if you think that my questions were the question that should have been asked. Let's get to that video clip right now.
Americans really don't like book bans, which is fascinating because it seems as though this is the one issue that conservatives are obsessed with, and it's what they are championing in public schools all across the country.
And winning.
In addition to, of course, turning the transgender community into public enemies, when in reality they are the least powerful group in the country. And
oh my God, the least powerful group. Do you know how freaking powerful the LGBTQIA MOUSE? Hey, by the way, how's that thing in Disney working out? They're not powerful. This is news reporting from TYT, the Young Turks, the Young Jerks. They're not a powerful lobby. They're not represented in every place. In Washington, D.C., on the East Coast, on the West Coast, in Hollywood, in academia, in colleges, in universities. They're everywhere. They're very powerful. They have the power to cancel people if you say the wrong damn thing. And Anna goes and says, oh, they're just like, they have no power whatsoever. They can't do a single solitary thing to anybody. They're like a little kitty cat, little pretty little kitty cat, just purring and meowing, can't do nothing to nobody.
And are dealing with the worst treatment and discrimination you can imagine. Now, with that said, there's a new poll done by YouGov that shows independent voters, which really, when it comes to elections, the independent voters are the main focus. If you're already identifying as a Democrat or Republican,
it's always the independent voters, those precious independent voters. We gotta go for those precious people. YouGov, that's a poll you're citing. I wouldn't even wipe my, well, you know what? With the paper that the YouGov polls, are printed on. Very rarely does anything from YouGov. Listen, if it has GOV in it, flush it down the toilet, please.
More often than not, you're gonna vote along party lines. Independents, that's the big get. And independents don't seem to be buying the book ban. So let's take a look at the results of the poll. The question is there ever a time?
So take a look at it. Here's what they're talking about. Okay, we'll get to what she says. But it says, how political parties feel about banning books. Is there ever a time when a book or novel should be banned from public school classrooms or school libraries? Is there ever? See, that's the question. They said, is there ever a time? So, of course, people are going to say, I don't think there's ever a time they should be. What do you mean ever? The question they should have asked is specific questions. If a book has got sexually suggestive, it's implicit, it's showing you how to do things, it's not age appropriate, you're basically showing, a sexually explicit book or novel or illustrations or graphics or words or stories to a third grader, fourth grader, fifth grader, to a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old, if you're doing it, if it's age inappropriate. Would you show a XXX pornographic book to a minor child? That's what the question should be. The question should be specific, not freaking general. Is there ever a time? And then take a look and go, oh, you know what? Well, no. Independents go 34%. No. Democrats go 47%. No. Oh, but those racist, bigoted, homophobic, transphobic Republicans, they're just like 58%. Sure, ban them. That number is going to go even higher, folks, on all. Because guess what? Independents have got children as well going to school, young children. Democrats, even they were on our side when it came to critical race theory. How do you think Glenn Youngkin was able to win the governorship in Virginia if it wasn't for those parents that came and crossed over from party lines and joined and got him elected? This is absolutely a winning strategy for Republicans. But we got to be smart. It's not every freaking book. It's those that are age inappropriate is what we're talking about. Sexually explicit, age inappropriate books. That's what they're talking about. That's the question asked. That's what the Young Turks didn't basically say. Let's listen to the rest of this.
When a book or novel should be banned from public school classrooms or school libraries. So let's pause for a second because I just want you to chime in on the framing of the question, John.
I shall.
Because that framing is, in my opinion, a little ridiculous.
Well, I have a way that I think it's ridiculous. Which way do you think it's ridiculous?
Well, okay, so when you say, is there ever a time when a book or novel should be banned from public school classrooms? I mean, there might be a book that's like particularly obscene and you wouldn't want a minor.
You're saying it's a very like minimalistic framing. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if the pages were filled with spiders.
See, they basically are coming across exactly what I said, that the question was, but they're still utilizing that question as the basis for their saying, which is their thing, that this is not a winning strategy. They should have basically said the same I was saying was that the question should be more specific. And if you get more specific, you'll see the numbers rise for people that do want to get rid of that book or move it off of that, get it out of that area and put it in a more age-appropriate location. And you're going to have crossovers from independents. That number is going to go up, and that number is going to go up from Democrats.
Yes, I think that should be banned. Yeah, I can come up with a time in which
it's
probably, if it's like strictly a guide to, I'm not even gonna say what I was thinking, but something super explicit or violent or like, here's how you build a dirty bomb.
Exactly.
Yes, okay, fine, but that's not what's being debated.
That is not what's being debated. I didn't like the framing of it, and I think the framing will lead to inflated numbers of pro-book bans.
Yeah, but interestingly, I don't think those numbers are super high considering the minimalistic framing.
Exactly. Okay, perfect. I'm glad you made that point.
We're right there. We're right there.
With that said, let's take a look at the results. So obviously, the majority of Republican respondents are in favor of book bans. Okay, so 58% say yes, 26% say no, 16% not sure. But independents and Democrats are not in favor of book bans. Only 40% said yes to that question.
Ever?
Yeah, ever. 40% of independents, to be sure. And then with Democrats, the number's even lower at 34%.
Folks, that's 4 out of 10. All right, that's 4 out of 10. 26% basically say no. So let's say that's 3 out of 10. And then you got 3 out of 10 that say no, 4 out of 10 that say yes. You convince one more person. You basically, you're 5, right? You're 4 out of 10 right now. You convert one more person, you're basically 50-50. And that's asking this minimalistic question that's not specific either. So not even being specific, you're still 4 out of 10 that want on independents that want to ban a book. Watch what happens, okay, when you get specific.
Now, nearly half of all Democrats were against banning books from school libraries for any reason. So that's fascinating. Again, given the framing of that question. Now, the survey asked about topics which should be banned in schools, and this is where it gets a little more interesting. A slim majority of Republican respondents agreed that 5 topics should be banned from school curriculum. So why don't we take a look at the next graph, and that'll give you a sense of what they think should definitely be banned. So for instance, 67% of Republicans want to ban books with depictions of sex or sexually explicit content. 59.
And see that number right here? Look what happens here. 67% of Republicans, when you depictions of sex or sexually explicit content. Remember what I just told you? 40% minimalistic questioning. Right? Is there ever a time? 40%. But guess what happens? Depictions of sex and sexually explicit content, I just told you, that number just went up 10 points, 9 points, folks, 9 when you went specific. Exactly what I told you, but they're not going to harp on that. They're going to focus on the other stuff. Okay? They're not telling you that. Look what happened, 67. Look what happened to the Democrats, 39%. And again, depending upon how sexually explicit or implicit, depending on the age inappropriateness of that book, you're going to see those numbers get even higher. That's really what most people, most Republicans, most conservatives are concerned of right now. Critical race theory being taught inappropriately to not the right age group, all right? And the same thing in terms of sexually explicit content. Let's continue.
9% say they want to ban books with anti-police messaging, except when it comes to the FBI raiding Trump's home.
In that case, you can be against that. I'm going to write a book about that just to see.
Or Capitol Police on January 6th. Any book that's negative toward Capitol Police on January 6th, that's allowed.
Or any law enforcement or soldiers when we finally start our race war. Then you aim for the head, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing.
By the way, really fast. So I love it's like, no, this is like, I don't like censorship. This is just about protecting the kids. How dare you insult the cops? That has nothing to do with protecting the children. This is just propaganda.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this guy is another idiot on the Young Turks. He definitely is the epitome of a young freaking jerk. It's not about the kids. It's all propaganda. That's all. It is, just propaganda. We don't care if there's a book there that's talking about sexualizing Sally or Molly or John or Bill. No, who cares about that? It's just propaganda.
Now, so when it comes to the depictions of sex or sexually explicit content, while 67% of Republicans are cool with banning those kinds of books, only 49% of independents agree. And then as you get lower down the list, you can see that the percentage of independents agreeing decreases significantly. So only 39% of independents say that they want to ban books with anti-police messaging. Only 35% say that they want to ban books with discussions of gender identity, whereas 57% of Republicans want to do so. Only 32% of independents want to ban books that have discussions of sexual orientation. And shockingly, 51% of Republicans want to do so. And I say shocking because I would have guessed that number would have been higher.
Well, I think it's interesting that the gender identity is now higher than sexual orientation. The less explicitly sexual part has been fear-mongered about more, so that's actually taken precedence.
That's true, yeah. So anyway, again, when you consider that elections really end up coming down to independent voters, this isn't a popular issue for Republican lawmakers, yet they're pushing for it in various states. And to some extent, there is a conversation about this on a national level as well.
Keep thinking that, Anna. That's exactly what you guys thought about 2016 with Donald Trump. That, you know what, the culture issues. You thought the same thing was happening with critical race theory. We heard the same garbage dump that was happening on progressive stations like the Young Turks with the Young Turks. We heard the same thing from MSNBC, from CNN, from the other alphabet networks, from the media mafia cartel, from the academic elitists. You know, we heard it from the hypocrites in Hollywood. Every single time we were hearing that, it's a losing situation. They're not teaching critical race theory. You parents are absolutely stupid. You're just moronic. You're retarded, you parents, okay? They're not doing that. They never taught critical race theory in schools. They're not doing it. Then you find out they are teaching it inside there. Books are inside there. That idiot, moronic, retarded Ibram Kendi, that idiot that's writing about critical race theory, that moron, that race hustler, that race baiter, that racist, that bigot, his books are being taught all across the country in many, many schools by teachers, by administrators. Don't tell me, okay, that it wasn't a winning, it was an absolutely winning strategy for, as I said before, for Glenn Youngkin in Virginia. And it's been a winning strategy. Look at all the school boards that have been overturned. The number of school boards that went from liberal to conservative were by the hundreds across this country. Look at all the parents showing up at school boards and voting these woke social justice warrior virtue signaling, SOBs in the school districts and the school boards. They're voting them out. And you're telling us it has no effect. It's not a winning strategy.
So when asked if there's ever a time when a book or novel should be banned from public school classrooms or school libraries, 40% of independents said yes, 34% said no. So why are Republicans doing this? Well, according to YouGov polling, 67% of respondents who voted for President Donald Trump in 2020 said that they approved of the book bans.
There you go.
So here's my question to you, John. Are Republicans, and I asked Ben Shapiro this when I had a discussion with him last month, there's a disconnect, right? Because if elections come down to, general elections come down to the independent voters, they're not really buying what MAGA is selling. But when it comes to Republican primaries, Republican voters like the MAGA candidates.
Yeah, I think that puts them in a difficult position. I mean, that was the story of the 2022 midterms. They swept primaries and then went on to lose because they're crazy, and people can see that they're crazy.
Where did they lose? They won they won the House of Representatives. Maybe not by the margins that they did, but they did flip the House. So when did they lose? It was a winning message. Now, yes, there's always going to be some certain candidates, some red candidates in predominantly blue states. That's tough. Same way for some blue candidates in red states, tough. But overall, it was an absolute winning strategy, and especially at the local level too. So you know what? We'll fight our battles at the local level and we'll win. And now we're going to basically do it at the national level. And so the reason why this is happening is these guys are absolutely scared, folks. That's why these polls are coming out, showing that it's a losing number. 40% of independents, okay? That means the other 60%, you just got to convince 4 out of 10, as I said before. Get one more, get two, you're on the winning side. And if you get specific, you will be on a winning side. Just like they got specific in Virginia. And they were saying, is this the new map? Is this the way to win over independents and parents now? By following the Glenn Youngkin strategy. Remember all that was being talked about?
Presidential elections, obviously, like it didn't work last time around. Some of them are hoping that Ron DeSantis is going to present a less insane persona than Trump. I don't even know if that's true right now. And in 2 years, come on, with the stuff that he focuses on, I think he comes off as more aggressive than Donald Trump on a lot of this stuff. So I think he's going to activate a lot of liberals and progressives. But anyway, yeah, the book stuff is really interesting, even with the minimalistic frame. Like when I'm referring to minimalism, I don't just mean like, is there ever cause, which is so vague, that could mean almost anything. Like even the labels. Sexually explicit.
Right.
What does that mean? Well, we know what they mean when they say sexually explicit. Literally any even vague, like throwaway reference to sex they're using as an excuse to get rid of things.
True.
It doesn't mean that it's
True.
graphic depictions of how to do the wheelbarrow or whatever. That's not actually what it is. You won't find out in a library, I guess. You'll have to use the internet like every kid will. But anyway, and by the way, and they're not even thinking about it when they're
Such a good point. Such a good point. That, kids would just go ahead and use the internet. So that means the same thing, right? Hey, they're going to find drugs on the street, right? They can find on the street. They can find that, they can find that pimp on the street to prostitute themselves. They can go to a drug dealer down the street and they can get their drugs. So instead of doing that, why don't we just give them the drugs in school? Why don't we just do that? Why don't we just have the pimps in school so we can prostitute the kids? Why don't we just do it there? Cut out the middle person. Ana Banana. Unbelievable. Hasta mañana.
Responding to it, you can't have any discussion of gender identity or sexuality. Well, then all of the right-wing books about what it means to be a man, that is a book about gender identity. That is a book
That is a book about true gender identity. It's not a book about an illusion or a delusion or the collusion of, fact-based science and not fact-based science. What the hell are you talking about?
Often about sexuality, straight male sexuality. That's what those are actually about. So again, none of this is
society.
A deeply thought out foundational principle that's being communicated. It's a vague sense that I bet if we let them continue to ban books, I'm not really gonna care about what they end up doing, and nothing I would want, even if I were to ever go to a library, would ever actually be banned. I think that whether it's a conscious thought, I think that's what many Republicans end up thinking. Ron DeSantis isn't gonna ban the sort of books that I would want if I ever read a book.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake people who work in news or politics make is assuming that the general electorate is fully informed on everything that we know, right? So
there we go again. There's that elitist bullshit going on. We know better than the people there. I'm working for the Young Turks, also known as the Young Jerks. I have all the information out there, but those, serfs, those peasants, those plebes, those vassals, those slaves out there in flyover country, those hicks and hayseeds, I'm just a dumb person with a hick and hayseed, had my suspenders and my jaw in my mouth, my tobacco. I gotta spit out my tobacco. I don't know nothing about no books or sexualization or CRT or LGBTQIAMOUSE. I don't know nothing about that stuff unless I listen to it from a person like you, baby.
There's a great comment here from Elegant Dragon 44. I think a lot of Republicans honestly believe that the books being banned are legitimately pornography. And
some of them do.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad point. I think you're right about that. And so, look, I know I repeat this all the time, and I'm sorry for being redundant, but it's the problem that we're experiencing with these filter bubbles, right? Where people, depending on where they get their news, keep getting served up more of the same content, the same news content. So if you're in a conservative algorithm, you're not hearing about how the Florida school board decided to they voted to ban Tango Makes Three, a children's book about penguins.
Yeah.
Literally a children's book about penguins that has no sexual innuendo in it at all. I'm gonna venture that most Republican voters are unaware of those kinds of details.
Yeah.
What they hear is the right-wing media and the DeSantis press conferences that make it seem like there's like endless smut in school libraries. Which
and it's
crazy.
So obviously ideologically inconsistent that they will go from like an episode of The Five will go segment to segment. Like this book has a reference to the fact that someone, like a kid who's growing through puberty or whatever, masturbated. Well, obviously the strength of the federal government should strip that from every library. They stopped calling a woman a crone in a Roald Dahl book. How dare you? It's so wildly inconsistent. Like kids can't possibly see that. You gotta call them fat. Try to just get together. Rent out a Marriott or something and talk amongst yourselves about what you actually think about books. And then stop briefly to think about the fact that you're spending so much time thinking about books when you so clearly read so few of them.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate.
Oh my God.